What's up, Doug?
Hey, how you doing? Great to be here.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Indeed. Thanks for coming through.
Oh, please, love it.
Please. Oh, man. Does my reputation precede me?
Absolutely. I mean, all the conversations we've had, you know, you're seem on point. I can't wait to see what you got for me today. So
Good stuff. So these bridge builder conversations, pretty much my aim is to paint a picture. What does it look like when we have relationships and conversations, authentic conversations across difference? I don't understand what you do in detail. You know what I mean? There may be some things about myself that you don't know about or understand, but this is the opportunity for us to learn, expand our perspectives, and in hopes that we move forward stronger collectively. So,
well, if I'm allowed to ask you questions, like, what do you see as like, what are you most either enthusiastic or disappointed in, like the work that you're doing? Like, what are your passions? What gets you?
I like this, Doug. I like this. He did it right up top.
You said it good.
Yes, I would say in the work I'm doing, my focus is changing the emphasis that's placed on relationships.
Okay.
I think a lot of people think what I'm doing is diversity, equity, and inclusion work.
Got it.
I believe it can support that work, but I believe there's people who are way more talented in the education aspect, policy, and everything. What I'm trying to change is what we found that in, and what we base that in is actually value across difference. And when I care for you, what I do with that becomes much more impactful and sustainable because I value you rather than let me check a box.
It's funny, it's so true. Like even I was talking about this with my head of HR and a couple other people about people being back to work and not being back to work. And one of the things that we saw during COVID is the ability with people without an in-person relationship and without really knowing them to be angrier, to be shorter, to complain about people. And when you're forced to be in a room with people and then work together and have a common goal and a purpose, you know, I see that day to day. And once you know people, that builds a lot of bridges.
That is the hope. And just patience is extended, grace is extended where necessary. But no.
I don't know about patience, but grace is all right.
Grace, all right.
I don't have a lot of patience.
Got you. No, I hear that. But so before we continue in that direction, because I definitely want to circle back to that, I just would like to understand more of, again, your origin story. Like, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? What did it look like?
Sure. So it's funny. I was thinking about this today. I'm 52. And I've spent half of my life basically doing LendingTree and half before it. So I guess in that first half, I grew up in central Pennsylvania, very rural area. My grandmother had a farm. I still have a scar under my arm from where I ended up as a kid hanging on the meat hook on her front porch that she had to lift me off of. And we used to go get Indian arrowheads, Native American arrowheads out of the fields. And it was just a really sort of idyllic existence. It was funny because my grandmother, I consider her a conservative, but she was a conservative, but I always remind people in politics, the root word of conservative is conserve. And she would wash her Ziploc bags out and save them. She would make sure that everything was saved, nothing was wasted, and was just a wonderful soul. My parents were both the first generation who went to college. My dad was from Western Pennsylvania. He grew up really, really poor. My grandfather was a coal miner. They didn't have running water in their house growing up. And they both became teachers, fell in love, got married, had me, had a sister who's 5 years younger than me. And then my dad left teaching and became a cookware salesman, I was more introverted as a kid maybe, but I was a little bit nerdy. But then I also had to earn my own money, which probably was the first entrepreneurial stuff I did, and not all of it was actually legal.
Tell us about that, though.
So among the things I would do, well, my legitimate businesses were mowing lawns, babysitting, and helping my dad generate leads by cold calling people in the white pages and trying to set up appointments for him to sell cookware. Among my other activities were sneaking out of my parents' house, and I would sneak across the street. We would run out in the middle of the night and get golf balls out of the golf course pond. We'd get chased around by Bucknell, which is the university I ended up going to, was Bucknell Security. So we try to hide from them. We'd get the balls and then sell them the next day to the golfers on the club. And then that was one. And the other one was a fireworks business, which was great. And that was awesome because my cousins, my partners in crime, their mom was a single mom. And so we could get deliveries to their house, and they would come from South Carolina labeled chicken parts, and we would break them up and sell them to our students at school.
Chicken parts.
Yeah.
How old are you at this time?
I'm probably 15, 16.
I sold candy. I didn't sell chicken parts.
I know.
That's funny.
But you learned about inventory, and when my parents found out about it, they confiscated all the goods. And to this day, my dad still has fireworks that he's shooting off from like 30 years ago or something. Every 4th of July, he pulls them out. So those are my early days. I wanted to, when I graduated from high school, I was a runner and, was successful in high school, but and I wanted to go to school in the South. So I applied to William and Mary, Duke, Carolina, didn't get into any of those, and got into the school in my hometown, Bucknell University. Okay. Rode crew while I was there, was an accounting major, and left to Pittsburgh and was an accountant for Price Waterhouse. And that was was one thing I always try to do is like try to go after a weakness of mine, and one of them is numbers. I really suck at math. So I became a CPA. And that was really educational for me because I really got to understand accounting and all its beauty, believe it or not. Understand that that was not what I wanted to do for a living. But my parents had instilled in me like financial management responsibility, that you earn your own money, you set aside giving, you save money, and then what's left you can spend. But like you don't start with spending. And they also taught me that like try to be an owner, not a renter, as soon as you can. So there was a condo or apartment that I was living in, and it was for sale as a condo and down the hall. And it was $55,000, and it was 1994, so I was 24, and I needed to get a mortgage for this $55,000 condo. And at the time, the search engine was the newspaper, so you looked at the bank rate table in the newspaper, and you picked the first bank, and you put your tie on, and you walked down to the bank branch, and you sat there with the loan officer, and I'm a CPA and fairly financially savvy, and I'm nervous. I'm feeling judged. The rates are changing, and I didn't understand this process. And then somebody goes, well, that rate in the newspaper is not for you. It's really this rate. And you're going, okay. And then you go, well, I'm going to comparison shop. Who's the next bank on the list? Put your tie back on, take some time off of work, go down and apply with that guy. And then you sort of get the same runaround. So ultimately, I closed this mortgage, but I hated the process. And 2 years later, I was doing a project with a natural gas energy company. And this is sort of the way entrepreneurs work, is you kind of mix all this stuff up. And I was sitting there going, wait a minute, like you can make these really efficient markets selling like natural gas derivatives around like the difference of prices between two geographies, but like you can't figure out how to get mortgages in the hands of people in a way that's not completely demeaning and degrading, and that you can't actually comparison shop. Like if you think about it, you can comparison shop like peanut butter at the grocery store, but it's hard to comparison shop loans. So I had this idea to create a marketplace for all types of consumer credit. And it was early January 1996. A friend of mine from college and I each put $5,000 in and started something called Lewisburg Ventures, that named after the town where he had gone to Bucknell to, and put together. And basically, I left my job then and I started selling, and spent that probably 6 months cold calling banks and trying to get through assistants, trying to get to a head of marketing and say, hey, guess what? We're going to send you new customers over the internet, and you guys are going to send us back answers to those customers, and we'll even send them to you electronically, and you can send them back to us. And they were like, what's the internet? Like,
right, exactly. This is 96?
Yeah.
January
96.
Wow.
So that didn't go so hot. So I'd gotten into business school at UVA and the Darden School, and I went to business school. While I was there, I was just finally soaking up everything like a sponge. I got a 3.0 in college because my dad said he wouldn't pay unless I had a 3.0, so I graduated with a 3.00. Business school, I really dove into it, and I was also working on this business on the side. And so the schedule was insane, and I was working so hard. But by the end of that first year, I had met who really became instrumental in the founding of LendingTree, a guy named Rick Stiegler, who did all the technology for us. I'd raised a little bit of money. We could talk about how that all happens. And I had a decision point to make where it was either this entrepreneurial journey or getting a job with then Nations Bank, now B of A, in investment banking for the summer, where I was going to make $5,000 a month. And that was a freaking lot of money with student loans and everything else I was facing. I was recently married. And thank God I went to a lecture by a guy named Jim Collins, who's written Good to Great and Built to Last. And he taught a class, and he allowed the first year students to come in for the last lecture. And he basically gave such an empowering talk about how if there's any time to be an entrepreneur, it's right now. And so I went and thought about this, and I learned what now I know, after teaching entrepreneurship and studying it, it means an affordable loss because I don't take a lot of risks. I said, I'm going to give myself 1 year. I'm going to move to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to give this thing a shot for 1 year. And if it doesn't work, I'll come back to business school and get a job. So I left business school, moved here, set up shop in our spare bedroom, and just, started to grind away. And it wasn't a lot. And, Charlotte was very different. There was not a lot of young entrepreneurial, tech companies. But it's turned out to be a good place.
That's very interesting. One, I want to understand your allure with the South. From the colleges you wanted to attend to deciding to move here to Charlotte. What is that about exactly?
So it's funny you say that. So my first interaction when we were living in Lewisburg, and I was from the time I was 5 to probably 8 years old, turned out a guy named Jim Valvano coached at Bucknell University, coached basketball at Bucknell. He became the coach at NC State, and won a national championship there, and gave a famous speech at the ESPY Awards before he died, and he and my dad were best friends. My dad was a starving teacher, and he was a starving basketball coach who had to raise all his money to get his $25,000 salary. And they were really good friends until he died. And so when he came to NC State, this guy from the country, I'll never forget when I got there, they're like, oh, we're going to go visit the Valvanos. And I just thought of him as the guy who ran my birthday party. And we came down here 2 years after we won the national championship, and I was 15 years old, and it was an NC State Duke game. and you're sitting behind the governor and everybody's going crazy and the Duke guys are saying, ha ha ha, you're going to work for us someday. And like, and so I just, then I finally dawned on me that there was actually, a world of sports like that. And then as I researched the schools, I was like, wow, this is kind of the place I think I would like to be in my college years.
Gotcha.
And it didn't happen. And I'll never forget, like, even here's how silly I was. When we came down to visit schools, we're sitting in a Motel 6, and my dad calls Jim Valvano and says, do you know if Doug got into Carolina? We just visited, and he goes, let me call over and check. And he says, nope, Doug's not getting in. And he goes, if you tell me he's going to go here, I'll call Dean. And I said, Dad, who's Dean? Okay, I didn't know who Dean Smith was. But in any event, so the South was to come later. And it's turned out to be great. At the time, a few years later, Silicon Valley was starting to blow up. And you had all these internet companies that were really not built to last, and that were just a bunch of puffery. And the thing that's always been great about Charlotte, like Rick Stiegler, who I call my co-founder and he came down from New York right away in '97. We've had a lot of people move in, and then we're also able to hire from the bigger financial services firms. Like, once you get tired of making PowerPoints and wearing suits, like, come over to LendingTree.
That's funny. That's funny. No, that's interesting. And you said you have one sibling?
I have one sibling, yes. One sister, she also moved south. She lives in Huntersville.
Okay, she's older or younger?
Younger, 5 years younger.
Gotcha.
And my parents have moved here too now. So and my dad still sells cookware from his apartment. So it's hilarious. He still puts ads in the Central Pennsylvania Farmer, and then people call him up to buy stuff from him. So
he's doing what he got to do.
I know. Apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
So you also mentioned earlier, I guess, that you feel you're an introvert. Why?
No. Well, I wouldn't say I'm an introvert. I would say that I'm not I don't want to say not confident, but I would say risk adverse. And I think that's a common misperception about entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurs are these gunslinging risk takers. In most instances, even if you look at, the best is Richard Branson. When he started Virgin Airways, he got Boeing to lend him the planes. So if it didn't work out, he could give the planes back because the economy wasn't well. So most entrepreneurs start with, who do you know and what do you know? What are my skills? Sort of go from there, then try to get in the market very quickly, co-create with somebody else, all in a way of minimizing risk.
Sure.
And that's what I meant by that. So it's being just more cautious than anything.
Sure.
And then when you're making a bet, it's such a calculated bet and
it's
thought
not really
out
risky.
that it's not as risky as people seem to think from the outside. I'd argue that getting a job and working for a big corporation is more risky than doing something on your own.
That's funny you say that. So my last full-time job, I had that same perspective, and again, it's probably still like this. I felt like, to a degree, I was, as well as a lot of my colleagues, were remaining at the jobs that they were remaining at for the health insurance. And for me, it was like, is that worth all of this time in your life? Right. No ambitions beyond that, but also to the risk aspect is this job can lay you off tomorrow.
Exactly.
Just like you can lose an opportunity as an entrepreneur.
So true.
So for me, it was, would I rather bet on myself, if you want to put it that way, or would I rather trust that someone else is going to do right by me and want to fulfill my dreams and my purpose?
Right. No, that's amen. No, that's hats off to you. I mean, I remember Jim Collins saying the very early thing. He said, the risk is not that you're going to be unsuccessful, because he said the people say that 50% of businesses fail. Well, maybe the first one, but like, you know, or maybe a lot of times that failure is, they calculate it based on corporations that don't file anymore and stuff. Well, that didn't mean that maybe you just decided to stop that and do something else or whatever. Sure. He said the risk isn't that you're going to fail. The risk is that you're never going to start. And I still remember word for word. I'm getting goosebumps here. He said, when you get to he goes, you're going to get a good job out of here. You're going to have 2 cars. You're going to have a couple kids. You're going to have a house. And he goes, guess what? Then you're comfortable. Try to do it then. He goes, the only way you can do that is if you live way below your means and you sock money aside so that you can actually go do that. And, you know, that's...
No. Wow.
It's got to get it going.
Yeah, that's some point. Again, it's hard to make those decisions when you're comfortable.
Yeah. One of the things I think is...
Complacency.
Yeah. And you can even take it inside of the company, too. Like I have in a slide I give to talk about like entrepreneurship versus, you know, like normalcy. Like if you had a new idea in a company, like you have to have the idea, then you got to go study the market, write up a plan, get financial approval. Let's say it's a tech idea, make sure the tech's okay with it. Is it going to meet our deadlines? Can I slot it in with all the other stuff going on in our company? Sure. And the thing is that at any step, like it can die. So at each one of those, there's like a yes and no by somebody out of your control that's going to decide that. Is it going to get approval? Is it going to fit in the tech queue? All of those things. When you move over to like doing it entrepreneurially, where you first like just, you know, you have an idea, you go to market, ask somebody, what do you think about this? Then you're getting data. And then, by the way, when somebody tells you that, you're not only getting something, but that person also might say, you know, then you can say, well, here's how, you know, can you recommend something? How could you help me? Right. So now you're co-creating, to your point of bridge building. Now that person has a vested interest, skin in the game in what you're doing. Doesn't mean they gave you money. You know, nobody does any, you know, that might very well make them happy. Rick Stiegler, my partner, when I couldn't afford to get him out of Wall Street, I made up an advisory board, gave him a little bit of stock. And for many years, I thought, wow, like what an amazing guy to do that. And then I realized that he was working at a big corporation. He was a brilliant engineer. And for him to be on the advisory board of a, you know, fintech startup, like in, you know, 1997, like, you know, that was great. That was good for him.
For sure.
And then most people, you know, don't go out and ask. A lot of, you know, aspiring entrepreneurs fear rejection. And that, you know, thankfully I got over that in my cookware sales pitches. But, you know, you have to, for me, I had to turn that into a numbers game more than anything else. But when, like in entrepreneurship, that's called turning lemons into lemonade. Sure. And anytime, like if you get in the market really quickly, some people say no. Well, then you ask, well, what would it take to do that? Sure. I had that early on, and probably, I believe it was 1999. I was still pitching banks, but now we were getting a little bigger, and I was saying, still like, oh, we're going to send you data electronically. You're going to send us stuff back electronically. And I met with a woman at Wachovia up in Greensboro at the time, and at the end of it, she goes, Doug, this is like too complicated. We just can't do this. And thankfully, I said to her, which I think I've learned is a really powerful question, what would be a big win for you? And I've learned over the years, everybody answers that. And that's how we set like relationships with our lenders. And she told me, Doug, all I need to do is get a website up and running by the end of the year. And then I said, how much is in your budget? And she told me it was several $1 million. And so I said, well, if I can give you away, she had to get a website up and running, it would take a mortgage application. And I went home and talked to Rick, and I said, how difficult is this? And he goes, I mean, Doug, we'll take the LendingTree server, we'll copy it, we'll find everywhere it says LendingTree, we'll change it to Wachovia, we'll make it, you know, red instead of green or something. And, you know, and we talked about the things we made. And it was funny because I had hired a lot of like industry experts and like executives, and they told me that doing that was off strategy. And I said, it's money. how can it be off strategy if it doesn't take much effort and they're going to pay us? And now we have another revenue stream. And we ended up selling that as that software package as well to Bank of America. And it got us over a major hump. And we wouldn't have known that business even existed, right? If somebody were sitting in a company and said, I think we should sell private label websites to banks. And like, you never would have come up with that. Like, you don't know what markets you're creating until you actually get out there and see what it is.
No, so I'm laughing over here when you say, we need a website. And what's your budget? $1 million. So what brought me to Charlotte was I studied multimedia web design.
No way.
At the Art Institute.
Oh, wow.
And how would I say, very entrepreneurial, as you speak to, again, like I joked earlier, it was selling candy in middle school, not chicken parts. But
where'd you get the candy?
From Dollar General.
So you got Dollar General, then marked it up.
Exactly.
What was Did you like candy?
Do I like it? No. Well, I did then.
Okay.
I don't really.
So why'd you decide to do candy? Because I'm going to see it.
It was easy. It was easy.
Okay.
And for me, from a numbers perspective, it's like, if I can buy a bag of candy for $1 and I can sell them each for 10, 25 cents. I know enough math to figure that out.
Right.
So yeah, that was one of my hustles, as well as again, whether it's cutting grass or trimming hedges around the neighborhood. It was very much, and for me, it was, I realized that, and again, it's like the small things as a teenager, if my parents can't afford to buy me new sneakers at the top of the year or clothes I want, all right, let me go to my next door neighbor.
Yep.
Can I cut your grass for $20 type deal? So, no, this is great. And even how you're speaking about, and we haven't even dived into LendingTree specifically, but the entrepreneurial way you speak about what you do is kind of surprising to me, in a good way.
Interesting.
Because as you talk about, again, just entrepreneurship, and for a company I co-own, Hugh House. It's a creative agency. Yep. And as we're building our team, the way we refer to it is we're looking for entrepreneurs. So it's like people who will be entrepreneurial internally.
That's totally fine. That works too. Yeah.
Who will own it, be passionate about it, and they're not waiting for us to tell them what to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I guess let's make that transition for LendingTree. You talk about, again, 97?
Yep.
97, talking about the internet.
Yep.
Again, I was a sophomore in high school. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have a computer. I didn't have an email address. So even for me, but you're trying to sell this to banks, this idea.
Right. So
tell me, again, I kind of hear what has led you to LendingTree, but what does it look like? How did it begin? Where is it at now?
So first off, to your candy making thing, I want to make this point up. So it would be, I bet you would experience too, I don't know if you had any friends, I had kids my friends worked in serving ice cream at a really cool place.
Sure.
And they made $3 an hour, whatever it was in the 80s, 90s. I bet you probably have friends who worked in, got a paycheck.
Sure.
And the thing that even when you do the math, think of what you make mowing a lawn or selling candy is way more than what people are making by having to go fill out, to your point earlier, fill out 15 job applications, do a good job, do your thing. And you just witnessed, we both did it right there as teenagers, and it made our lives better. You had better sneakers. I actually had updated, I got Ralph Lauren shirts and skis that my parents couldn't afford. But so on LendingTree, what I ended up doing after doing a lot of the stuff I shouldn't have done, like overwriting a business plan, what I finally did is I said, well,
is that a thing? Hold on. You say overwriting a business plan.
Yeah. I don't think you should write a business plan necessarily. I think you should have a financial model, but the notion of doing, for example, market research and stuff. Okay. I'm not a big research guy. I think you just go in the market and find out, talk to real people.
Sure.
And you'll get 80% of the way there, and you can refine from there.
Gotcha.
What I finally did is I spent about $500 when I was in business school on ads on Yahoo. And when you searched for mortgage and home and credit card, we had a banner ad above it. And in those days, our sales rep who covered the entire East Coast, he had two clients, basically. He had the porn industry and the online porn industry, which is out of Atlanta, and us for $500. And what I did, though, is I ran these ads that said, fill out this form. It was called Credit Source. And fill out this form, and we're going to have banks compete for your business. You get the credit you deserve to. And I got in hundreds of people who filled out their name, social security number, address, boom, 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 boom. And I was sitting in class, and my email started coming in, and I was like, oh my gosh. I wrote back emails to all these people and said, thank you. You don't match the specific criteria of any of our banks yet, but we'll let you know when you do. But I took that data and I said, okay, this is my customer acquisition cost. I just had this class on geeking out contribution margin accounting, and I applied it, and it's become like the basis of LendingTree, which is we have a customer acquisition cost, we have a revenue per customer, and this better be higher than that.
Sure.
Take that times your volume, covers your fixed cost. So then I went to the lender side where I had all these lenders that I was talking to, and who basically wouldn't get off the dime. And I said, look at this. If I spend $500, this is what I get. Imagine when I raise money and I get, and we do that. And then, so that was kind of the start of that. And then I got a couple lenders up, that were doing very small business. We thought it would be all electronic. It turned out the first lender was like, can you fax it to me? So like we would fax information to lenders. They would rekey it into their systems. Then they would key it into a system. Then we'd present it to the customer. And, but it's a flywheel business. So as lenders were able to get better, offer better pricing, better service, faster response times, initially on the phone and still in our mortgage product. We're changing it, but it's somewhat phone-based to talk to people. Then they would improve their conversion rates, which would then enable them to pay us more for every customer. Then we would be able to market more. Then they're able to get more volume.
Sure.
Then that flywheel that flywheel keeps going, and it worked. And, it's been crazy ups and downs, but, a number of things happened for us, which were interesting. So early on, the cost of internet advertising went from like that $500 thing to with all this internet money, where we had a deal with AOL. AOL said, if you give us $10 million, you're going to be the exclusive loan provider on the AOL Money Center that's going to come out sometime next year. But until then, we're going to give you run-of-site banner ads. And I said,
what year is this?
This is probably 1999, maybe early 2000.
Okay.
And I said, my accounting said, like, how does that pay out? Like, tell me that. Like, this is, and they said, well, who cares? You can go public if AOL does a deal with you. And I'm like, no, we're not doing that. And I had hired a guy at the time who had come from Coca-Cola, and he said, Doug, I can pencil out TV. And so we took advantage of, we had several years of just trying to raise money, and probably would have done it with a lot less, because by the time we sold in 2003, I only had 6% of the company. But we raised money in an IPO in 2000, February. We would have been dead 2 weeks later. The market cratered. And we put all that money into a TV ad campaign in 2000 that really put the brand on the map, got more lenders engaged, and really got that flywheel spinning. We watched our stock go from 20 to 2. And then we just kept focused on our numbers, focused on our initiatives, really just executing. And then in 2003, a company called IAC Interactive came in and bought the company. So then we're part of a big conglomerate that was including Ticketmaster, Home Shopping Network, Match.com, Expedia, and a number of other businesses. And then we continued to just run the business, grow the business, recovered from that crazy, the first, we've been through so many financial crises, which is kind of interesting. So the first was 2000, 2003 we sell. In '05, my boss, Barry Diller, who's kind of a titan in the media industry, who controlled IAC, asked me to become president of the holding company. So I moved to New York City and did that for a few years. And then in 2008, the second financial crisis that I've been enabled to be involved with, that happened. And Jack Welch at the time was Barry's consultant advisor, coach, if you will. And I really learned how to run a business from him, which was wonderful. And he came into my office and said, "Doug, you're a bleeping idiot if you don't go take LendingTree back again." So in 2008, I moved back in the midst of the mortgage crisis now, and our business was about 95% mortgage. So we had to go, we had to just really, really restructure. And then we built it back again, and then COVID happened. So we've had these interesting episodic times, but we're working on the right stuff, and I have a great group of folks. And but yeah, COVID was the latest of a challenge for us that we're still. So it's been 3 years of feeling like, I think like everybody did in COVID, I felt like every day you wake up and you're not sure, which what inbound artillery you're going to get, and it was just all over the place. And but now things seem pretty steady, and now we're just focused on a few key things. So
I hear that. Yeah, you've been through a lot. I mean, the first in which you really didn't.
I think
talk
I just
about,
did 15 years there.
Yeah, you didn't talk about the tech bubble, but
yeah, that was 2000. That was 2000. Which that tech bubble? What other ones do you want?
Oh no, that was it. That was
okay,
it.
Good. Yeah.
Everybody's again paying millions of dollars for a website.
we went public. So we were in '99. We were finally able to get some real, call it serious money. I got discarded by all these VCs in Silicon Valley, and I had this, odd mixture of investors who were mostly individuals and who turned out amazing. And then in '99, given the tech bubble, we were able to raise $50 million, and then we went public, raised another 44 right after that. And then with that, we were able to have a nice war chest going into it. Yeah, 2 weeks later, we would have been dead. We were sitting and, doing our IPO roadshow, just watching the markets get all jittery. So we were right at the tail end of that.
So really quick, and again, for me, I from afar know who you guys are and some of what what you guys do and what you shared here. But if you had to sum up what LendingTree does, and I feel like I heard it in some of your origin story, how would you sum up?
I would sum it up as we're a marketplace for every type of consumer credit, where you can comparison shop among basically every financial institution, whether it's a mortgage, home equity loan, auto loan, credit card, personal loan, and also insurance. We have Quote Wizard as well, which is comparison shopping for all things insurance. So the purpose of the company is really to turn the tables to the benefit of the consumer, hold the lenders accountable. Sometimes I jokingly, for people who know government stuff, I call us the for-profit CFPB, that by holding all these institutions to account, making them follow the rules of the road, then we can give everybody the fair shake they should get. And then the other thing is, because you've got all these lenders that see the world differently on any given day, you can give access to credit to, from one institution that somebody might never have heard of, might be a credit union, might be a smaller lender, et cetera. So,
got you. No, cool. And that kind of leads into, I guess, another facet of our conversation. And I may be reading into this, but it sounds very much by having this marketplace that you can level the playing field
totally,
in certain
100%.
ways that you weren't able to before. So
absolutely,
from a bridge building perspective, how do you believe LendingTree creates opportunities or access
totally.
that didn't exist before?
Totally. So, well, number one, you're judged based on the value of you as a financial person. So regardless of your race, regardless of where you're from, regardless of how you look, regardless of how articulate you are, you're dealing through a computer. And then when you're dealing on the phone, literally you've got 4 or typically 5 lenders who are calling you. In addition to that, so if you take somebody who is particularly has low credit, and by the way, like I believe that like one of the things that I care deeply about is upward mobility. And I believe that you can do by doing very simple things, which I can talk about, like you can improve your credit score. And as you improve your credit score, your access to credit, your credit rates should come down. But the problem is no financial institution, no bank ever calls you up and says, you know,
have bad credit.
Like, hey, no, but they never call you up and say, hey, your credit score went up. Congratulations. I'd like to lower the rate on your loan, right?
Gotcha.
They never do that,
Gotcha.
right?
Sure.
So one of the things that LendingTree did is we have something called My LendingTree, which is not only like free credit scores, but also teaches you how to improve your credit. So if you've got a mortgage at 9%, we can tell you that, listen, your credit score is 662. When your credit score gets to this can happen. And then we can say, oh, you've got 5 credit cards. And so our systems are doing these doing the recommendations, but then the purpose is to just give you the right answer or the right decision. So, you know, hey, you know, Sally, take these credit cards, put them on a personal loan, one personal loan. Your credit score goes up this much, your payment goes down this much. And if we know your goal is to be a homeowner, like we can help step you through that process. And we have, you know, I actually originally built this product around a guy named Calvin, and Calvin works in the locker room of my club, and he came to me and he goes, Doug, like you're in the lending business, an African American guy, divorced, you know, his credit score sucked, and he had aspirations of starting a business. So like I sent like a couple of our nerdiest guys to go like understand Calvin's situation. I said, if you can fix Calvin, we can like help fix like tens of thousands, millions of people around the country. And sure enough, they did. And Project Calvin turned into what's now My LendingTree, and it's getting better and better all the time. And Calvin actually started his business and was doing great. And still, like, we still kind of laugh about it. And but that's also something that's important too. I think even designing great products, you have to, and most entrepreneurs generally are this way, which is very, very empathetic, and the ability to walk in people's shoes and hear from them, then understand their situation, and then go, okay, like if I, you know, and then you design around that. And so my first stuff's always coming from me as that 24-year-old kid walking in that bank with my stupid tie on,
Sure.
right? Like, which I never wore again.
No, that's cool, and I agree with just empathy, you know, what I mean? And being able to understand, which is to me the base level, being able to understand those who may not be like you, may have a different credit score, journey, different name, because also when you talk about challenges, it's the dynamic of based on your name, there's stereotypes around. Oh,
Amen. Sure.
Tawanda, who's she?
Absolutely.
You know, rather than Sarah or you know Tim.
Everybody's got preconceived notions of pretty much everything. So
Absolutely. So I'm thinking about what you're doing with LendingTree, and I guess do you even obviously you have your personal experience that you're like, let me solve this problem because it was a pain for me. But when it comes to again upward mobility, which you spoke about, what are some other challenges that you've recognized that you guys have an opportunity to be a solution for?
in what areas?
So, I mean, again, even the idea of stereotyping based on name is a thing. How do we do that? Well, how about we shop these things just based on the numbers rather than someone's name? So what other things do you feel like within your industry typically hold lenders back in being able to serve? others or provide loans?
Oh, I think it's desire, scalability, and profitability. So just makes sense, right? If you think about it, the smaller the loan amount and the higher the longer the more processing stuff I got to do, right? Means that I don't want to serve certain places. So, a $60,000 high credit or low credit score loan from an area with depressed real estate prices, right? Like, which generally could be the inner city, like think Detroit, Pittsburgh, some places where I'm from, and also other very rural areas. It's hard to get an appraiser there if haven't done a lot of business there. So then you're looking at your profitability per unit, and you're missing the fact that with technology we can do that. But I actually believe if you create a marketplace, the marketplace will take care of it. So for example, I've seen in the personal loan business, it evolved from people that were like personal loan sort of branch-based lenders, not payday lenders, but maybe 2 steps up the scale.
Sure.
But I'll tell you what, if you put 10 of them in competition,
sure, that's just like for your business.
And you say if you want to get more of that business, so that you just get them where they specialize. So what you try to do is not try to teach Bank of America to go downstream. You try to teach the smaller people how to automate and be like the bigger lenders.
Gotcha.
So if I think about what we try to do at its core, it's try to give everybody in America the same level of advice and service and access to the market that you'd get if you were a billionaire with your own private client guy.
Sure.
And at the same time, help the smaller lenders who maybe don't have a big brand name but want to do business the right way. Give them the technology and the tools and the access to customers so you can balance that out.
Intrigue. So there's a couple things going through my mind.
But I think if we just solve, for us, if we solve the fact that we'll always save you money, because we get paid by transaction and do that thing that no lender will do, which is no credit card company calls you and say, hey, congratulations, we'd like to cut your rate today, right? The only way you get access to that is through going around and shopping on your own.
Sure.
So we can help you do that, but on our marketplace, but more importantly, on My LendingTree, we'll just tell you the right answer.
Interesting. It was very interesting. As you're talking about, obviously, a business, fintech, and when you're talking about technology or machines do this, not people. And I have this conversation with my wife a good bit about the bias in the machine. You may be familiar
with
the
this. Machine?
The bias
in
the machine. Okay. I think it's Dr. Joy. She did, Harvard student.
Yep.
Face recognition. You familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so she did.
Yeah.
I think it was a thesis just about how darker skin tones were not recognizable by this technology, and she's pretty much diving into the reality that who we are and who the developers are who create the technology.
Yeah.
How would I say? I'll put it in the positive. They know what they know. And what they don't know can't exist in the technology. Meaning, for this specifically, is they didn't think about how to process darker skin tones.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it's let me block you out. It's just they didn't think about it because they don't have that experience to even be able to think about it and be front of mind. So, as you talk about LendingTree, it just popped in my head. It's how do you guys figure out or continue to learn, you did through experience, what the challenges are, who's at the table to help identify those things when it comes to whether it's a inner city or black neighborhood, and the challenges. Who do you guys engage that community to learn, okay, what are the challenges and how do we build something to meet those needs? How does that happen for you all?
So we do things to engage the community, but more important, I would say, it's either.
And when I say community, it's more like consumer or customer.
Yeah. So the thing, so just like I said with Project Calvin, think of, I'll give you a stereotype, like two Indian genius engineers who are immigrants going to meet with Calvin, who shines shoes to understand his perspective and design a product for Calvin.
Sure.
Right? Like that's how you do it, and you don't do it through. It's the difference between like research and talking to real people.
Sure.
And saying, all right, talk to me about this and tell me your experience, and because you learn all the corner cases, and then you think of, well, how do I solve that exact problem for this person? In shaping how they did it, I got to make them better at LendingTree too. So like I got to say, okay, well, let me push on that. Let's think about if you want to get adoption in this. And so I like helped them do product development around their own initiatives. And it definitely made me a better leader, and it made us a better company because we had people doing it and telling me what to do. And then all I had to say was yes.
That's cool.
But it definitely opened a lot of eyes.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So, to round out our conversation, again, I'm having these conversations to paint a hopeful picture of, if you put it this way, the opportunity that we're missing by not being, how would I say, not just more communal, but more focused on knowing one another and experiencing the value outside of ourselves. So, if you had to put it in a sentence or two, how would you encourage or implore your fellow industry mates when it comes to the value of bridge building and the importance of bridge building, and meaning leveraging their power to create opportunity and access where it hasn't existed before?
Well, first, let me maybe say something about relationships, which is I think leaders in anything can get completely stuck by only seeing people of your quote unquote kind, if you will. So the more insular your environment of the people you deal with every day, the more you're going to make judgments about people that really aren't true. Most of them, and you can, whether you're labeled, racially, you're labeled politically, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, whack job, who knows, right? Most of us can actually understand each other if you sit down and talk about it. And if you don't, shame on you, because you're hurting your business. You're also probably don't have very good relationships with your employees, and your products probably aren't designed very well. They're not probably talking to real people and in the voice that they recognize. It's funny. We even on our forums, I always challenge people to talk like in a human voice and to make sure that you're not like using industry jargon.
Sure.
Like most people don't know what a FICO score is. Like, let's explain, here's what this means to you. And then to your definition of bridge building, in my sphere of influence, and we do this, encourage lenders to explore different areas of segments of customers, and to try to not only do the right thing, because we know that we'll force them to do that, but to not, like in our business, like you go by state and you can go by loan amount, but to explore how you can profitably, at lower margins, do right by customers that aren't just going to be your most profitable segments. Like any mortgage company can do $1 million loan for somebody who wants to put $500,000 down. But understand that there are not only underserved places and people, but also that can be a good business decision for you too, because, I think back to my dad's thing about selling cookware. I mean, that's a customer you're gonna have for life. Like, do something to help lift somebody up. They're gonna show loyalty to you in the same way that you're honoring them and showing them loyalty.
Sure. No, that's dope. And to wrap things up, I believe that in doing the right thing, I believe, and I'm hopeful in this way, that things will be better. I also believe within the context of society and the way things have always been done, which very much sounds like your business is changing how things have been done, holding lenders accountable. I believe you can also experience some loss in that, meaning whether it's, a banking institution not working with you because you're going to hold them to the fire. Has it cost you anything in that type of way and as you've done business?
No, I don't think so at all. It's back to that notion, if I can help somebody improve their credit score and their financial life and help them achieve their goals, like, that's going to be a customer who's going to be around with us for a long time. And then in the areas where we can't make money, the LendingTree Foundation puts a lens on anything we can do around upward mobility, but also still keeping in that vein of empowerment. So, for example, instead of us, like we don't have a ton of money, like, we're not a big bank, so we try not to be giving donations or buying tables at the gala fundraiser. But what we do is we have a cohort of 15 nonprofit startups in the community that we have given money to, and then meet in our offices all the time. And we leverage people at LendingTree who can then teach them stuff. So how to write a press release, how to get your site higher up on social media, how to do your books. Then they share best practice on fundraising, things like that. And you try to, that's kind of our philosophy across the board.
That's cool. So I appreciate this conversation.
Thank you very much. It's been great. It's been great to meet you. And
absolutely.
It's like you got a great team here. And
thank you. I appreciate it. But before you go, I have a gift for you.
All right. I'm psyched.
So this is my Bridge Builder motivational journey.
Nice.
It's 52 weeks, autographed copy.
You wrote a book.
Yes, I did. 52 weeks.
How'd you have time with that to do that?
Well, I found it. It was important to me, so I found the time. Nice. But it's quotes as well as reflection items as well as action items. And my intent with this is those who desire to use their power and influence to change things.
I love it. Well, if there's anything we can do together in the future, just look us up. So
I appreciate it, Doug.
We're happy to lean in. So
thank you.
You're awesome. Great to see you, man.
Absolutely.
Loved it.
All right.